Okay, so we're going to talk about gut health today, which is definitely a trending topic. And I think sometimes it gets thrown around in the setting of like, drink this shake or take this probiotic and, that sort of thing. But I want to talk today about like, what is all the hype about gut health? And why does it need to be the hype? So, I mean, I practiced medicine for 12 years, and what I know now in my studies of the gut microbiome, I wish I had known 12 years ago. The good news is that more and more is coming out, even in the conventional medicine world, about the significance of the gut microbiome, specifically as it relates to mental health, weight management, and chronic disease. So, um, I have some notes here. It's really geared more like clinical, but I'm going to share my screen so you guys can kind of see and I can take you through like what makes gut health important, what is so important about the gut, and what are like some practical ways that we can improve gut health. So I'm going to give you guys just kind of an overview of something called the 5R protocol. And it is the gold standard as far as identifying food sensitivities and just for gut health in general. So if you are one of my functional medicine patients, you are familiar with this from like an elimination diet standpoint. And this is kind of the program that I walk through with everyone from a functional medicine standpoint. But for everyone else, it'll be really good for you to just kind of see like, what is it? What are some things that I can work on my own? And if you're ever at a point that you want to do some of this functional testing, I'm going to show you at a report called a CSAP that is a glimpse into your microbiome, which it's one of my favorite tests. Second to DNA core, it's one of my favorite tests to get and gives me so much information. So let me share my screen. Like I said, this is more clinical based. I know a lot of you guys are nurses, nurse practitioners. And I'm not going to go through like each slide. I just want to show you a couple slides from a couple different presentations. Um, so just starting out, like what are some facts about the GIT as the gastrointestinal system? And this right here kind of sums up like why is gut health important. So it contains 3/4 of the neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are things like serotonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine. These are your mood hormones. So when we talk about mental health and the effect that the gut has on mental health, it is significant. I actually just read a study that came out about that gut health and its relationship to addiction. They looked specifically at alcohol addiction with a set of laboratory rats and the different bacteria that was in their gut that made them have that addictive behavior. It's a very fascinating study. If any of you guys are interested in reading it, I'm happy to send it to you. Just let me know. But it containing 3/4 of the neurotransmitters, I mean, that's a given that it's going to have a significant effect on mental health, mood, addiction, all those things. It contains 2/3 of your immune tissue. So when we talk about it being a big portion of your immune system, and there's a big argument right now, or not argument, but that most or even all chronic American diseases are originating in the gut. So when we say chronic disease, we're talking about hypertension, diabetes, obesity, that sort of thing. Even we'll talk about as we go, like, from a colon cancer standpoint, there's always been a lot of literature on fiber, fiber, fiber. Well, you could look at that even more and say the reason you need a lot of fiber and that high fiber diet is protective against things like colon cancer is because of this here. When we're eating a lot of fiber, we have good gut microbiome diversity. We'll look at some specific measurements in the CSAP test that look at that, but that's really kind of what it can be traced back to. So the other thing about it containing 2/3 of the immune system is when we talk about autoimmunity. So autoimmune conditions are really on the rise, whether it is autoimmune thyroid conditions like Hashimoto's or Graves' disease, and then of course things like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, that sort of thing. And a lot of literature, when we talk about the immune system being in the gut, it is that intestinal barrier is responsible for identifying friend versus foe. So if that is not functioning properly and you have a friendly cell and you identify it as a foe and start attacking it, that is what gives rise to autoimmunity. So immune tissue here means immune system. Yes, your common cold, food poisoning, just all the normal immune stuff, but also cancers, autoimmunity, and that kind of thing as well. It contains as many cells as the rest of the body combined, which is crazy. And it has a genome 100 to 150 times larger than the human genome. So it's like a fingerprint. Everyone's is different. Yours is very unique to you. I kind of use the analogy when we talk about the 5-hour protocol, as far as like prebiotics and probiotics. Your gut microbiome is your garden. And you want it growing good things. And it has metabolic activity greater than the liver, which the liver is kind of known as being like the powerhouse organ, but it has greater metabolic activity even than the liver. So we're going to skip over some of this stuff because a lot of it is not super pertinent to you guys, just from a... Okay, and this is what I wanted to show you. So what is the gut microbiome? And that's kind of what I was just describing with my garden analogy, but it's bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microscopic living things that are referred to as microorganisms. There are trillions. They live in your intestines, on your skin, and they have a beneficial effect for you and for them. Kind of goes into who discovered the gut microbiome. We don't have to get into all that. So why is it important? I just wanted to highlight some of these points too. The genetic material of your gut microbiome outnumbers your personal genome 150 times. Diversity, this is when we look at this CSAP test, this is something we're going to be looking at. We want it diverse. High diversity of microorganisms is associated with better gut microbiome health and overall human health. And a low diversity is associated with many chronic diseases such as obesity and type 2 diabetes. Some of you may have heard me talk about the relationship to obesity and the microbiome. There are, again, several lab rat studies where they do fecal transplants on obese rats that have specific, like low diversity, to lean rats, and the lean rats become obese. Similarly, they can take the good diverse bacteria from the lean rat, transplant it to the obese rat, and the obese rat becomes lean. So it is significant. There's lots of studies. But anyway, I always just think that's so cool. It helps us combat aggressions from other microorganisms, plays an important role in the immune system, performing a barrier effect, and it is key to ensuring proper digestive functioning. So when we're talking about constipation, diarrhea, maybe a mix between the two, bloating, abdominal discomfort after you eat, all of those GI complaints, we always want to look at the gut microbiota. You'll see here, diet is considered one of the main drivers in shaping the gut microbiota. Okay, so these slides are looking at a CSAP test, but I'm going to show you my own in just a minute. So let's, so this is the other thing I wanted to show you guys. Changes in microbial composition are implicated in increasing propensity for inflammatory disease, allergic diseases, asthma, inflammatory bowel disease, obesity, and lots of other non-communicable or like chronic disease. Let me make sure there wasn't anything else on this one. I think in another Q&A, I'll get into like healthy gut, leaky gut. Leaky gut is becoming very, like a term that's thrown around a lot. And I love these slides. It's just kind of what happens when you have leaky gut, looking at celiac villi versus normal villi. But anyway, for today, let's not get into all that. Although I love all this stuff. I could talk about it all day. Let me just quickly scroll through here and make sure there wasn't anything Oh, I know what I wanted to show you. Okay, so this right here. I'm going to step on some mom toes for a minute with the hand sanitizer. Are we forgetting to induce tolerance? Remember, okay, nutrition plays a big role, stress plays a big role, overall lifestyle. All of you doing functional medicine with me, we're focusing a lot on stress management, sleep, nutrition. But this is another big area, especially post pandemic, with all the patients that have come to me. And part of what's made my business successful, praise God, a lot of people are developing autoimmune conditions. They have weight struggles. Now, some of that is like working from home, the stress of everything, but a lot of it has been mask wearing and obsession with hand sanitizer. I am not saying we're past masks, so I don't feel like I have to like get into all that. But just remember that hand sanitizer is not always better, especially like when it comes to our kids. Good hand hygiene. I'm not saying to like, use the bathroom and then eat food without washing your hands. Good hand hygiene is great. But when we are sanitizing everything and squirting hand sanitizer in the backseat of the car as soon as the kids get home from school, that sort of thing, like it can be a bit much. So hyper cleanliness is directly related to decreased gut microbiome. So here's one other slide on that. Just in first world countries, are we being hyper vigilant about cleanliness and forgetting the good from being exposed to soil, farms, pets? So let your kids go outside, let them be barefoot, let them dig in the mud, in the dirt. Don't panic if they touch their mouth. Like this is all really, really, really good for their immune system and for you. Take your shoes off, go outside, walk in the grass, do some gardening. You don't have to wear gloves all the time. Practice good hand hygiene, but maybe let's think about how much we're using both cleaning products and hand sanitizer and that sort of thing. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to show you guys from that. Just highlight one thing here as far as a healthy gut, proper mastication. So you have to chew your food. That's another thing that we're busy. Listen, I'm in the same boat too. It's running from practice to game to school, just constantly. We're eating on the go, we're eating in the car. Even if you are in a situation where you have to do that and you really don't have that much choice, chew your food thoroughly. That is where digestion starts. I always hesitate like saying a number, but you're supposed to chew your food 20 times before you swallow it. I don't like saying a number because then sometimes I start counting in my head and it makes me a little, a little crazy. But make sure you chew your food. Chew, chew, chew. That is what triggers those digestive juices and enzymes to break down the food and allows proper digestion to occur. Okay, now sorry, y'all, I'm getting over a cold. So the 5R program, this is something that, again, it's the gold standard. From a functional medicine standpoint, like this is the root of, what we're working through. And a lot of times it takes time. It's not like you just check these things off your list. But from a gut health standpoint, this is it. So it's the 5R program. We remove, replace, reinoculate, repair, and rebalance. So remove, we're always thinking, what does this person need to be removed from? Is it toxins? Is it foods that are causing reactions? Poor diet, stress, like what needs to be taken out? And that is step one. So we look at the standard American diet, and that's a big part of what we have to remove. This doesn't happen overnight, and you guys know that I preach balance. So my approach to functional medicine is probably different than a lot of like functional medicine practitioners in that I'm fine if you go to Chick-fil-A and get a fry. So it's balance. What do we need to do for a period of time, and then what is sustainable? So when we talk about doing the 5R program, the elimination diet is a big part of what I would start with in that situation. I typically will wait till I have the stool sample back on my patient. And then we look at 4 to 6 weeks of removing gluten, sugar, processed foods, that sort of thing. And then we replace it and we get back to more of like all of you who are doing nutrition as far as macros, that's your life. That's like where you live. But if there's things going on at a root cause, a lot of times we have to back up a step further, set a better foundation, and then move to that sort of approach. But anyway, the standard American diet, this is what it is. And this is what obviously is leading to a lot of chronic disease. So removing stressors, allergic foods, that's something that I do with a food tolerance test. Leaky gut inducing foods, which would kind of go back to allergic foods, medications. So proton pump inhibitors, antibiotics, oral contraceptives, those are all things that we kind of balance the benefit and the risk of using any of those medicines because they can be detrimental to the gut microbiome. And then on this test that I'm going to show you, we look at parasites, yeast, problematic bacteria, that sort of thing. These are some resources, the microbiome diet and gut balance revolution. If you are looking for like a read on any of these on the 5R protocol. So the functional testing that we do is a CSAP, which is what I'm going to walk you guys through, a nutrition analysis, and a food sensitivity test. So again, we usually start with the elimination diet. This is a really long presentation, so I don't want to go through it like in super detail, but basically we would do an elimination diet. I have a really good like full autoimmune protocol meal plan with recipes. If this is something that you want to tackle at some point, if you recently started and you're getting in the routine of hitting your nutrition goals with your macro numbers that I've given you, your body is responding, I don't recommend taking it to this level right away. If you have some pesky symptom like fatigue or brain fog, anxiety, stomach issue, or you're not seeing results, as you work through the basics, then this would be kind of like a higher, more intense, next step, I guess I would call it. So I do have those resources for anyone. I'm happy to share them if it's something that you think in our time working together that you want to look at. But basically in an elimination diet, we remove processed food, all sugars and sweeteners, including artificial sweeteners, hydrogenated fats, juices, potatoes, gluten, and all grains. And again, this is not long-term. You can actually, doing this long-term, we could end up with some nutritional deficiencies, which we don't want. Usually I can always add potatoes back in. Some autoimmune conditions, people are sensitive to that, but it's only for 3 to 6 weeks. So you can do anything for 3 weeks. And then so after the 3 to 6 weeks, we do a gradual reintroduction. And this is why I have my program set up like programs, because people need help with this. I'm working with several people who were seeing functional medicine practitioners and they said, you need to do an elimination diet. And then they're like Googling, like trying to figure out, what do I eat? So all my functional medicine patients, I have a cookbook for you. And for all of you, I have meal plan recipes, any of that kind of stuff. And we do this together. I don't want you to be alone when you're trying to figure it out. But one of the biggest things is like food reactions can occur up to 72 hours after you consume them. So we only do one item every 2 to 3 days to see how your body responds. And these are some of the things that we're looking at when we're assessing how your body responds. So fatigue, sleepiness, weight gain, mental fog, insomnia, muscle pain, joint pain, you can read that list. Skin rashes, this is a big thing with gluten. I always feel like, is there anything left to eat? When I am leading a patient through this, I like to focus on what I want you to eat versus what you can't eat. Because sometimes the can't eat list seems really long and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I eat? But we're removing like the artificial sweeteners and sweeteners, the breads, pastas, dairy, and we eat this. We eat lots of lean protein, lots of colorful fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds. So yeah, it's very similar to like what Whole30 would be, although I've never technically done Whole30 and I don't necessarily know all the rules, but in general, this would be similar to Whole30. And remember, it's for a short period of time. So you can eat protein, vegetables, chickpeas and lentils, fruit, nuts, seeds, specific types of oil that are not hydrogenated or like a lot of saturated fat, and then spices. This just kind of goes over the elimination of gut bugs, which I'm going to show you in that CSAP test. If we find unhealthy bacteria, these are some of the supplements that we will use to get rid of it. So berberine, wormwood, caprylic acid, oregano, olive leaf extract, and obviously like with each person's testing that I get back, I give them specifics as far as what they should do. But this is just a list of different microbe species and things that it is linked to. So ankylosing spondylitis, which is a really painful joint like spine condition, rheumatoid arthritis, Graves and Hashimoto's, Guillain-Barré, MS, autoimmunity in general, lupus, autism. So there's so much research surrounding what goes on with all these microbial species that leads to these diseases. And then when we talk about medications, proton pump inhibitors, that's one of my first things that I try to get people off of. We really have to gradually do this. It is not overnight. It's really an art. It's not a science. And it can take a while, but it is worth it to get rid of proton pump inhibitors because it messes up your stomach acidity and you can't absorb the nutrients that you're eating if you're on them. The other things that we're removing are toxins, allergens, infections, and stress. The gut-brain axis is profoundly interactive. You know, that gut feeling, that feeling in your stomach that you get whenever something stressful happens. I mean, your brain and your gut are like very significantly impacted by each other via the vagal or vagus nerve. So removing or managing stress, we can't control our stressors, but we can control how we respond to stress. And I have done several Q&As on this. I think that's what I talked about last week, but that's something that everyone should be working on. And when I say working on, I mean plugging in some of the short, not time-consuming daily habits, the breathwork app, humming, diaphragmatic breathing, blast of cold water at the end of your shower. Those are all really good ways to stimulate the vagus nerve. And then we're replacing stomach acid. So stomach HCl, this is what is blocked if you're taking a proton pump inhibitor. But we need to replace that. We need to replace bile salts from the gallbladder and pancreatic digestive enzymes. And the way we do this is by doing like bitter greens, like arugula, spinach, kale. Most of my functional patients, I put on a digestive enzyme. And if that's something that any of you can look into, if you want a good recommendation on one, I can let you know. I have some in my store. And herbs, don't underestimate the power of herbs. I would love for some of you to start an herb garden and use them whenever you can. They have incredible health benefits. Let's see, apple cider vinegar. Love for my patients to use apple cider vinegar to help replace that stomach acid. Okay, and then re-inoculate. So this is where we're talking about prebiotics, probiotics. Prebiotics feed. So the probiotics are healthy bacteria and the prebiotics feed that. So if you already have good gut diversity, when you eat prebiotics, you're feeding them. It's kind of like fertilizing the garden. So prebiotics are real foods that when ingested feed the healthy bacteria in your microbiome. Fiber is a big part of this. And probiotics replenish your microbiome with additional healthy bacteria. So inulin is a prebiotic. It's a plant fiber found in a lot of superfoods like asparagus, garlic, jicama, onion, Jerusalem artichoke. Inhibits your absorption of sugar, helps you feel full. I always say that protein and fiber are nature's Ozempic. I mean, it's true. If you're getting enough fiber and you're getting enough protein, you will have significantly less sugar cravings and you will feel full. The same thing that people on Ozempic report. It helps you digest your food more efficiently so you feel less hungry. Other things that I wanted to just tell you guys, onions and garlic are really good prebiotic foods that help feed the good bacteria. Some of this gets we don't need to get into like all this. Some grains such as barley, flax, oats are good sources of prebiotics in a healthy gut. These are things though that when we are trying to get to the point of a healthy gut, if you don't have a healthy gut, they can be a source of like leaky gut kind of triggering. And so that's why it says like in a healthy gut. And then anything fermented. So kimchi, kombucha, Greek yogurt with live active cultures, that is fantastic. Canning your own vegetables, anything pickled. I love doing like purple or red onion, pickled red onion on different things. So wherever you can add something that is fermented, great. This kind of gives kefir, sauerkraut, all that stuff. Okay, this is something that I just wanted to touch on probiotics because a lot of people are like, I took a probiotic and it didn't help or it hurt my stomach. So there is a condition called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. The acronym is SIBO, that people, when they're eating fiber or anything fermented, it makes their stomach hurt really bad. And they typically have a lot of GI complaints. And that requires working one-on-one with a practitioner to really sort that out. But a lot of people also are just not taking the right probiotic for them. So that's where this testing can be really helpful because it tells me your unique situation and helps me know what you should be taking like at that time. Quality counts, you get what you pay for. If you would like the recommendation of a good probiotic, please let me know. I have lots available in my store, and I've worked with most of you for long enough that I could give you an idea of what would be best for you. Always check to see if it needs to be refrigerated. All the companies that I carry in my store are companies that I know their manufacturing processes, and I know that they are good and legit and worth it. So sometimes your gut health is so compromised that you can't tolerate standard probiotic doses. So we start low, or even you can use a pediatric probiotic and go slow. And when we talk about repairing, we're talking about the intestinal lining. And this is repairing the effects of inflammation, restoring gut integrity. This is really where, when the friend and foe come in, this gut wall and intestinal lining are responsible for identifying friend and foe. So we want it working well. I'm not going to get into all these supplements. This is something from a functional standpoint that we will work on if I'm working with you in that capacity, but omega-3s are great. Zinc is great. Quercetin, although quercetin isn't very well absorbed, so I don't often do that, but zinc carnosine is great. And then rebalance. So this is the part that it's really easy for us to gloss over and skip. We're busy. We're told that this is just life and this is how it has to be, but this is not how I feel very passionately that our current society and the demands that are put on us are not what we were created to be. So thinking about what brings you joy, Why do you think you ended up in this health situation? What are you most afraid of? Thinking about your marriage, your kids, do you take care of yourself? I was thinking of something recently because I talked to a potential client and she said, I just don't think I have time to do this right now. My kids are in, sports and all that stuff. And, I really just want to put them first. And I know that as moms, we are selfless, and I think that that's what God has called us to be, and that's great. But the best thing you can do for your children is to take care of yourself. So your kids, more than playing sports, want you to be able to play with them. They want you to be around when they have kids, and not be, not have to have help rolling over in bed or getting up. Um, and just even thinking about, kind of generationally, like taking care of our parents and what that whole cycle looks like. I just feel very strongly that one of the best things you can do for them is to take care of yourself. So what does that look like? I mean, that's not to say that the kids can't play sports. We have to be home to eat all the time. There is a balance. And that's what I hope that working with each of you, that you will find that you can be busy and you can also take care of yourself. So thinking about where you see your health in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and what are you willing to sacrifice now to make that happen? And then how do we make it sustainable long term, even during crazy life? So just reiterating the gut brain connection, and making sure that we don't skip this part as far as, like I mentioned, breathwork app, diaphragmatic breathing, any way you can stimulate the vagus nerve. You can even Google like vagal nerve stimulation, humming, because it runs through here. And so when you hum, it vibrates and stimulates that. But highly recommend that you guys be intentional with that. All right, let me stop this share and share the CSAP that I want to go through real quick. Sorry, this is a long Q&A. They're not usually this long for those of you who are new. Okay, so this is a CSAP that I have on a current patient. And I just kind of want to show you so this is a glimpse into the microbiome. This is green. The green column is the expected and the beneficial flora. This is the imbalanced. And then sometimes we'll find this dysbiotic over here. We want all of the expected to be 4+. When I look at functional labs, I'm never looking just for normal. I always want optimal. So I want all of these to be 4+. And you see she's got some 4+ here with the Bacteroides family, but Bifidobacterium, we want to be higher. E. coli could be a little higher. Lactobacillus is no growth. And it's really hard to to re-inoculate when we've gotten down to no growth as far as getting that up. So this is where I can look at this, and pick a specific probiotic based on this no growth here, to really help that come up and start growing again. Enterococcus. So anyway, I want all these 4, and then these are weeds. So these aren't bad or good, but they're taking up space in the garden. And I want to get them out so that there's more space for the good. And then once we've spilled over into dysbiotic, these are weeds or even like bugs that can do more harm, and they are choking out some of this stuff. So we want to get rid of this. This a lot of times will cause symptoms too. So quite a bit of literature about the impact that this plays in celiac and the reaction to gluten, as well as bloating, weight, hormone balance. You guys, so much hormone regulation is happening in the gut. And so we want this to be as pretty as possible, to help you feel better. So this report goes through like what all this is. We do a yeast culture. You can see there was no yeast isolated on the culture, but sometimes yeast is a little tricky to isolate because it kind of clumps together. So if we scroll down, we check for all the viruses, pathogenic bacteria, parasites. You'd be surprised how much comes up on parasites. Parasites can cause a lot of like fibromyalgia, pain, like neurological type symptoms. Protozoa, this was all negative, worm, tapeworms, roundworms. But you see this yeast here was positive. I want this to be none, ideally. So there was some yeast there, but it, again, like clumps, so sometimes you can't see it on the actual culture. But the treatment for this, in addition to just continuing to work on cleaning up the gut, is to take a supplement called Saccharomyces boulardii that is a friendly yeast, and it helps crowd out some of the other yeast that we don't want there. Vegetable fibers you can see is rare, which is normal, but ideally it would be none. This has to do with chewing, so making sure we chew. There was no mucus. These are pancreatic enzymes. So a lot of times, this is someone that I was had been on a digestive enzyme before we took this sample, so we had that optimized. I don't have one from before we started working together, obviously, so I'm not sure what this was before, but a lot of times we'll see this be low, and this just reiterates that we need to repair or reintroduce some of those pancreatic digestive enzymes. Inflammation was normal, so this would all be indicative of inflammatory bowel disease, so we like to see that normal. This is a really important secretory IgA for immune system. So when we see this low or high, high is the body's response to an acute infection or insult. And sometimes if we see it low, it's almost like the system is just kind of taxed, like exhausted from mounting that response, and it'll actually just stop doing what it needs to do. But this level is really good. And then we look at all the short chain fatty acids, which is fiber. And all of these numbers with her were great. Again, we had been working together on nutrition for quite a while before we did the functional testing. So we had really worked on getting her fiber up, and everything here was beautiful. It's interesting though, if I have someone come in and start right off with functional medicine and we do this test before we've been working together, almost everyone is low on some of these. There was no blood, which is obviously a good thing. And then it kind of goes through all the different things. But anyway, that is just kind of a guide through a CSAP. Of course, you know, I always take the person's history, symptoms, and we go through. Oh, I know what I wanted to show you. Because there was dysbiotic bacteria here, it tells me at the bottom some of the herbs and also antibiotics that will treat that specific bacteria. So the hard part about antibiotics is that it further is going to wipe out the good. So I typically always will start with the herbal treatment first, and we will continue to work really heavily on gut health together, and then repeat this test several months later. And if we haven't made any improvements, then we would consider doing one of the antibiotics. So for this patient, it would be Cipro. Cipro is the one that would treat both types of bacteria. You can see the Pseudomonas here had less sensitivity to some of the herbs, but we're doing olive leaf extract and working really hard on gut health, like I said, in general. And hopefully she'll have some improvement in that. She's you know, we'll look at kind of symptoms and how she's progressing with that, but Cipro is the one that would treat both of them. So you could go straight to an antibiotic, but then we have to work even harder at replacing the good bacteria. And so if we can get away with doing, and there's quite a bit of literature about the effectiveness of different herbal treatments, and the studies that have come out so far say that they're pretty equal. The same thing for SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That requires a really expensive antibiotic called rifaximin. It's really not fun to take. And they've done a lot of studies on the herbal treatment, and it is comparable to the antibiotic. But sometimes we have to do antibiotics, and that's fine. So anyway, I hope that that was helpful. Just kind of a quick overview of why gut health is important, some of the things that we would be using to improve gut health. and the tests that we're looking at, that will help us know what you specifically need. So if any of you want anything that I mentioned, I think I said probiotic, any of the research about the lab rats with addiction or weight or any of that, and you can probably just Google it too and it would come up. Or the meal plan recipes, like any of that thing from a gut perspective, let me know. Otherwise, I think that's all I have for you today.